Keep an open mind, because life experience can actually lead to your next career. So keep a very open mind. If agriculture is what you want to pursue, then I say go for it. You know, like I walked into a teaching career and came out an ag writer. So it all depends on your life experience and how that shapes you. And just be ready for what life has to hand you.
Hey guys, today we are here on the Field to Film podcast with Whitney Shannon Haigwood. How are you doing today, Whitney?
Doing great. Thank you for being here.
So Whitney, tell us a little bit about your role as the staff writer at Delta Farm Progress.
Our brand is technically Delta Farm Press. We are a brand of Farm Progress, one of many brands, and we cover the entire nation. Actually, with Delta Farm Press, we cover the regional Delta states, which is Arkansas, the Boot Hill, Missouri, Western Tennessee, Mississippi, and Louisiana. So I spend my time traveling those states and getting contacts, getting stories, and seeing what we can put out there for our farmers and stakeholders in the ag industry.
So before we get into a lot of what you do and what your role entails, can you tell us a little bit more about your career path? Because it's a little unconventional.
Unconventional is definitely the best definition for it. So I started out with going to Lyon College in Batesville, and with a goal of being a pharmacist or going into the medical field. And then in time, I realized I didn't really love chemistry, and I really loved biology more. And there was actually a day that I was studying for a test with classmates, and we were about to take a test on the life cycle of a pine cone, and I had drawn it out. And my professor comes by, who also happened to be my advisor. And as I'm explaining this to my group and showing them this picture, he says, "Have you ever considered being a biology teacher?" And that changed my mindset about my career path. So I ended up eventually transitioning to Arkansas State University, which I graduated in 2006. And I left there with a Bachelor of Science in mid-level education with an emphasis in math and science. And I taught for 4.5 years at a local school here. In the meantime, we decided to start a family, and babies came along, and 8 years later I was, had been a stay-at-home mom and left the classroom. And then it was time to go back to work, and I still wanted to be in education, not necessarily the public classroom. And I found my space at Cooperative Extension with the University of Arkansas, and I learned so much about agriculture there.
So did you have a background in agriculture before that?
Well, when you live in rural America,
right,
of course, there's fields everywhere. I specifically worked, and I call his name often, with Bill Robertson. He was our cotton agronomist for the state. He's since retired, but he had an amazing career, and I'm so thankful that I got to spend the last little bit of his career with him, because I learned more about cotton farming and soil health than I ever knew was imaginable.
So, okay, let's connect the dots from your role there at the Extension office to where you are now. How did that transition happen?
Eventually, the opportunity came that I could apply for a new job in Extension, and it was technical and social media writer. Got to work firsthand with so many wonderful specialists out of the state of Arkansas. I still have them on speed dial for this job. So actually what happened was, in that role, in writing social media posts or stories, I kind of got hung up on, do I call them farmers, growers, or producers, right? I mentioned it and understood that farmers like to be called farmers. So I threw a poll out on Twitter: are you a farmer, grower, or producer? I just looked those up today. I've said 76% before, but I actually looked it up. 77% out of nearly 100 responders said they want to be called a farmer.
Okay.
And Delta Farm Press picked that up. And Miss Ginger Rousey, who was then a staff writer, did a story on me. And then a few months later, she said, "Hey, I think I've got a great role for you. We have a position open at Delta Farm Press." I'm not trained in journalism,
right,
but I love the data. I love the math. I love the science behind it, the research aspect. And so the writing just comes naturally, and I get to tell the story of ag.
So do you think that biology background has kind of translated over into this? It seems like there's that connection of really figuring out the why behind things.
Yes, and that's the fascinating part, the data and digging down into that. I've said before, a lot of people don't like to read research papers, but I do. And then you turn it around and you put it into some kind of digestible format so that everybody understands it. Some of my greatest moments are just talking to farmers who have read the story, who have seen it, who've shared it on Twitter. Having those shared not only by farmers but stakeholders in the industry. So I know that it was important to somebody enough to share it.
Yeah.
Actually talking to those farmers and them telling me how the story made an impact. One particular conversation I had with a farmer out of Louisiana, he told me, keep doing what you're doing, because it's these stories like this that we can take to our bankers, our policymakers, and they make a difference. And that resonated with me. And that's where I realized my audience is much broader based than just, it's not just writing to farmers, it's writing to the entire world to tell the story.
So what would you say your day-to-day looks like?
So primarily, I'm here. A lot of phone calls, there are a lot of phone calls, and there are a lot of field visits. It's primarily working from home, but some of the best parts are that I get to get out to the field. So I can go from working here one day to the next day, I've got my field boots on, and I'm out in the field with a farmer talking and taking pictures, to maybe next week I'm at a crop meeting and I'm dressed completely differently. And I'm no longer in my field boots, but I'm in a sport coat and I'm ready for a meeting. And I love the diversified part of this job.
So you have a versatile wardrobe.
Oh, you have to have a versatile wardrobe for this job. So, most definitely.
So soil health, that's a key focus for you. Can you kind of talk about that?
If your soil is healthy, you can reduce your inputs, and you can do that with cover crop. You can do it with a variety of ways to increase that microbial activity beneath your feet.
Yeah.
And those microbes, when they're below us working, they're doing things within that soil that we can't see, but it helps the crops as they start with rooting structure. It helps with soil infiltration. That's where the water use efficiency comes in. And so a good focus on soil health can save farmers dollars on the back end.
And so let's just say one of your students in the classroom where they were maybe thinking about what they wanted to do once they graduated, once they became an adult. What advice would you give them if they were considering going into agriculture, or someone without an ag background? What would you tell them?
If you don't have an ag background, dive into as many articles as you possibly can to learn about it. We write about it all the time, There's so much to learn. I would also really recommend trade schools and trades that can be used in the ag setting, whether it's an electrician or an equipment type, position where they go work on equipment. All of that's very, very important. We can start in high school. Go join your FFA program. Go take ag classes in high school. From there, you can go fine-tune those skills in vocational school. And then you are ready to walk into agriculture.
What would you say has been the most rewarding part of it all?
Honestly, it's my daughter seeing what I do. Oh, my youngest daughter, she had a project she was working on at school, and they had to do some cutouts, and someone brought in a handful of old magazines and boxes and stuff. She starts going through it and she finds a Delta Farm Press issue, and she goes, "Mom, your picture was in it and everything." So for them to see what I do and experience it firsthand, it's pretty interesting. And I like to run a lot of story ideas by them too. So my daughters being part of it,
I love
and
that.
them being raised as women in agriculture, that's one of the most rewarding things.
How do you see, agriculture journalism specifically evolving in the years to come?
That's a great question, because so many people talk about artificial intelligence. And it's AI, right?
Right.
It's pretty funny though, when you get into agriculture, AI can mean so many other things. It can mean active ingredient.
Avian influenza.
It can mean artificial insemination.
So many things.
But the AI I'm referring to is artificial intelligence, right? And You wonder, what would it take for somebody to just type a question into Chat GPT and formulate an article, and now I don't have a job. I'm learning that it's very important to, you don't rely on that.
No.
You can ask it questions, you can ask it for synonyms, but you've got to go back and check your sources. And so that's where the human part comes in, and it's actually talking. AI can't talk to the specialist.
No.
And so they need someone to go out and be relatable and talk to a specialist.
Yeah.
And so I see that we're going to continue with ag journalism. I see it moving really toward a digital platform. Paper still has its place, but I do feel like we're moving toward digital.
Well, Whitney, I had a great time talking with you today, and I just love hearing about how you can transform these stories into something that is tangible, that's going to help these farmers and policymakers. And I just think there's something just so great and creative too about that not a lot of people can do. And so I really thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been a great time.